Throwback Mountain Dew. It's my jam. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Jackverse. Today, it is just you and me. And over there, I have Punk Ass Punk open. That's my latest work in progress. That I should be finishing in about 4 or 5 days. And once I get it finished, it'll then go to the beta readers. And then once the beta readers give me their feedback and I work in any changes that might be necessary, I will then send it off to my editor, Sarah Marion, who I love. Editors. That's what I'm going to talk about today. That's right. So, all of you out there in Jackverse land, I want you to put on your smoking jacket, or whatever it is that you would like to don, maybe an evening gown with elbow-length satin gloves, and have a seat in your chair, and prepare yourself to listen to that which I have to say, because it is of grave importance. Okay. I do have a bone to pick, actually. And this bone is with writers out there, especially and mostly and probably 100%edly of the indie sort, of which I consider myself, which I am. I'm going to make this statement once. Okay, I lied, I'll make it a lot. And this statement is going to sound like I am throwing down the gauntlet and I'm saying, listen up, sucker. And before I say it, I don't want anybody out there thinking that this applies to anyone in particular, because it doesn't. It applies to everyone. Okay? Here it is. Are you ready? I'm throwing it down. Throwing it down. Prepare yourself. Buckle your seatbelt in, because this ride's going to get bumpy. Writers, you must have... Listen very closely. You must have an editor. Must. Notice I don't say you need an editor. You must. Must, must, must. This is not an option at all. And let me explain why. Okay? I started this journey a long, long time ago. I wrote my first story back in the 80s. Okay? Now, that first story never saw the light of day, nor will it ever see the light of day. And that's okay. Because we all have those tucked away in our little shoe boxes. We have our little stories that we wrote a long time ago. That maybe every once in a while we pull out and go, I wrote this when I was just a pup. Well, later on I wrote another story. I started another story that would turn out to become A Blade Away, which wound up getting published on the Amazon publishing platform in 2008. After I published Shiro. Shiro was my first... I published in 2007, back when the Kindle publishing platform was in beta. Wow, that's a long time ago. So I wrote these books, okay? And I had the gall to think that, hey, they're great stories. They're ready to be published. They're ready for public consumption. So I published them. Oh, the mistakes, the horror. Oh, the horror gives me the vapors when I think about it right now. So, soon after I published it, and no one bought it, I realized, that I jumped the gun. That it wasn't ready. Now, this was when the indie movement was really starting to pick up steam. And it took me a while, but I found an editor. And I used her. And she loved the story, but the story had some problems that had to be fixed. So together, we fixed them. All of the problems. And I republished both books. And lo and behold, it started my career as a writer. But had it not been for me hiring that editor, I wouldn't have become who I am. Because I realized in that moment that the process of writing and the process of editing are not only very separate processes, they require very separate skill sets. Now, sure, there are writers out there that can also edit. My editor, Sarah Marion, who I love, is also a writer. But she doesn't edit her own stuff. Let me tell you why. And this is very important for all of you out there. When you write something, let's just say you write a paragraph and then you think you know it's absolutely perfect. You reread it and reread it and reread it and reread it. Oh my God, it's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. It is art personified. Actually, not really personified because it's not really a person. It's just art. And you hand it over to somebody and they read it and go, oh, there's a missing word. It doesn't make sense. What? And you grab it from him. What the hell are you talking about? That's perfect. This is perfect. No one. Shakespeare couldn't have written a better. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Damn it. See what I mean? As writers, when you write that perfect paragraph, you know up here, you know exactly what it says. You know every word, you know every intention, you've got the backstory, you've got the point of view, you've got all the references right up here. So when they're not there, you don't see them. You don't see that they're missing because they're up here. And guess what? It goes much deeper than that. When you write your story, when you write your book, you write the end. You know everything that happens in that story. You've got the plot. You've got all of the characters' backstories and all the tricks and the traps and everything mapped out in here. And guess what? Some of it may not have made it to the page. So you hand it out to the readers. You decide, I'm better than that. I don't need an editor. My writing's perfect. You hand it out to the editors or to the readers and they read it and go, okay, first and foremost, there's some grammatical problems, but there's a big glaring plot hole right here. Big glaring plot hole. And why did you publish this? We don't see those things. That's why we need editors. Now, this is one of the reasons why I have the big bad beef with this. Okay, so if you, as a writer, feel like you are above an editor and that everything you write is gold, and you want to publish those books that come right out of your mouth, right out of your face, right out of your fingertips, you barf it out, blah, 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 and then you publish it, that will be all fine and great if that were only a reflection on you. But guess what? It is not. You see, the thing is that indie authors have a bad rap right now. The general population of readers look down upon us and they say, most of them publish crap. They can't write. The books are filled with grammatical errors and misspellings and formatting issues and blah, 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 blah. And they blanket us with that opinion. So because those people out there who feel like they're above editors or refuse an editor, because they just publish this stuff that comes out of their fingers right to Amazon, and the readers see that, they start to assume that that is the norm. So those of us who do hire an editor and take great pains to make sure that what we publish, the finished product, is polished and worth consuming, we suffer. Writers that don't use editors give all of indie authors a bad name. Now, you may say, but I can't afford an editor. Well, all you have to do is shop around. I have paid anywhere from $100 all the way up to $700 for the editing of a 60,000 word manuscript. Now, I got what I paid for when I paid $100. I did. And guess what? All of those books that got edited by that $100 editor had to be pulled and re-edited. Okay? Now, trust me, it is worth it. You have got to start thinking of this in the long term. You can't look at this and go, oh, but see, I'm cranking out 6 or 7 or 8 books a year and I can't pay an editor $300 to $500 a pop because I'm not going to make any money. Well, right now, early on in your career, it's not about making money. It's about building your name. And that name that you build must be positive. That name that you build must help to lift up the reputation of indie authors all around, because we succeed and fail together. No one in the world of writing is an island. No one. We all need each other's help. Okay? And that one bad apple out there can spoil it for everyone. And I know that I'm really vehement about this. And I have been there. I have been at that point where I felt like I didn't need an editor. And when I look back on it now, I cringe and think, had I started out, had I had someone on those early days to say, no, don't do this yet. You've got to get this polished. Things would have started out a lot less rocky. Now, fortunately, that was back in the Stone Age period of Amazon publishing. So it's not a big deal. And in the end, the book wound up being quite a nice representation. But you go to any university and walk into the English department, and you go to one of the English professors, a literature teacher, and you ask them, do I need an editor? And they'll laugh. They'll laugh. Because yes, you do. Because you are a writer and not an editor. And if you are a writer who can edit, you can't do them simultaneously. Let me give you a little story, a real quick story. I went to Purdue. I went to grad school at Purdue University. And, pardon me. And all graduates of Purdue University had to do this Office of Writing exam. Now, understand that I went to Purdue to study acting. I have an MFA in acting. All hail Purdue. Woo! It's a great program. I learned quite a lot. I'm very thankful for, all of my teachers there. But this, I went into this, thinking that, I can write a 1,000-word essay. I barf that out in my sleep. No big deal. So I sat down in this little room where I had to do this. Now, you only got 2 shots at this. So I wrote up what they did was you had to pick a topic from a hat, no idea what the topic was, and then you had to write about it. I don't even remember what my topic was the first time. So I picked my topic and I wrote my essay. Barf, 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 handwritten, which is a pain because my handwriting's so bad. Turned it in. And then they said, it'll be a week or so before you find out. A week or so passed, and I failed. I failed the Office of Writing exam. One of the easiest tests I've ever taken. I failed it. Why? Spelling mistakes, grammatical errors. So I had one more shot. So I go into the next time, and I sit down, and I was nervous as hell because I had this one shot, and if I didn't pass this, I couldn't graduate. So I sit down, and the dude that was administering this test looked at me and said, let me give you a tip, okay? You're not an editor, you're a writer. So when you're reading this, normally you're not going to see these spelling errors. You're not going to see these grammatical issues because you know exactly what you're writing. So as soon as you get it done, read it backwards because you won't know what comes next. And you'll catch those spelling errors. So I wrote this thing out. I got my topic and I wrote it out and I wrote it out and row your boat gently down the stream. And I sat down, finished, took a deep breath, and then I read it backwards. And I found mistake after mistake after mistake. And I scratched them out and I corrected the mistakes. I handed it, I said thank you, and I handed it in and I passed. Why? Because I was able, I had Fortunately, I got the tip that said, read it backwards. And I didn't know what came next because I had written it the other way. So I saw all the spelling errors that I wouldn't have seen reading it normally. That's what an editor can do. An editor can read it forwards and not only catch your ideas and missing plot devices and plot holes and misspelled words and misplaced commas. They catch everything. And you need that. Now, if you can't afford an editor right now, especially if you're cranking out 5, 6, 7 books a year, you need to slow down your process. You need to stop pumping out books and publishing them. You need to write a book and you need to find an editor that you can afford and give it to them. And let that back and forth, because they're gonna find some gold, and you're gonna find some gold in that back and forth. Which brings me to another point. When you find an editor, it's not just about price. It's about respect, and it's about give and take. It's about a relationship. Sarah and I have been working together on 7 books now. She knows my voice. She knows it really well. She can practically write in my voice now. So our process has become so refined because we've worked together so many times that she doesn't have to do track changes on the little things. She just corrects them for me now. And I say, okay, that's great. So when you find an editor that does a good job, that you respect, you stay with them. Believe me, I did the whole editor hopping for a while, and I was miserable for it. And every time I went to a new author, it was like starting all over again. And we had to develop a relationship, a trusting relationship that would work. And it takes time. So when you find an editor, and if anybody ever comes to me, I always recommend Sarah. But when you find somebody, or you hear of an editor that comes highly recommended by another indie author, look them up. See if you can afford them. And even if you have to slow down your publication process to afford this editor, it is worth it. Because your end product will be much more highly valued over time. Because, it's one thing. There are fans out there. There are people that love indie authors so much that they're willing to overlook the grammatical errors and the spelling errors and the formatting issues. They're willing to overlook that because all they care about, number one, is a good story, and number two, being able to relate with us, because they love that, and we love that as well. But there are readers out there that aren't like that, and they are cruel. And they will read your book that you published without an editor, and they will tear you to pieces. And let me tell you this. One bad review holds a hell of a lot more weight than 10 good reviews. So you want to do everything you can to avoid that review that says, well, I was trying to read it, but there were so many grammatical and spelling errors that I couldn't get through it. You don't want that kind of review. It's fine if you get a 1-star review that says, I didn't like the voice, I didn't like the story. But when you get those reviews that mention grammatical issues and spelling issues and formatting issues, what that does is it highlights the fact that you don't take this seriously enough and that the end product is not polished and you are not professional. So do yourself a favor and do the whole of indie authorship a favor and find an editor and use them and stick with them. Okay? This is a long, long journey. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm about to publish my 30th book. That's a lot. I know authors that have over 100 publications out there. Make sure that that work represents the best you've got. And make sure that it represents the whole of indie authorship well.